So in this video, we're gonna walk you through step by step how to scale a sales team from 100K a month to $1 million a month. So we'll cover mainly the sales aspects of things. I know there's a lot more that can go into the offer, the marketing side, but I'm gonna focus on the sales side. The $1 million a month myth. Scaling from 100K a month is not just about either pumping out more content, putting more money in ads, or just hiring more people. A lot of people think, hey, I'm doing 100K a month, or maybe I'm doing 200K a month, and I have X amount of reps. If I want X amount, I just hire more reps. As simple as that. It's not how it works, because as you scale, things kind of break. What got you to where you are now, whatever you're doing, 100K, 300K, 500K, if you want to get to $1 million, it's not necessarily always going to be linear, depending on what your systems are. Okay, so things do break, and the things that got you here won't necessarily get you there. Who am I to talk about this? My name is Mercier, and over the past 2 years, I've helped manage multiple sales teams, and we've generated over $40 million in attributed revenue from the sales teams that we work with. Now, on average, our teams do anywhere from 1.7 to 1.8 million per month in total cash collected. The teams that we work with that sell info products, coaching, consulting, and services. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the 6 key things that you need to scale your sales teams. The first thing is going to be recruiting and hiring. Second thing is going to be onboarding and ramping up for the sales reps. The third thing, systems and data, sales process, sales management, and culture. Without further ado, let's get into it. So recruiting and hiring, super key piece of the sales team. The goal with recruiting and hiring is to build a predictable recruiting engine so that we don't just hire when we have to. We always have that coming in for us. Now, recruiting is everything, especially in a sales team capacity, because we need salespeople who take calls, to call leads, and do those things, right? So again, if we increase the volume, if we want to scale, then again, we'll have to scale our talent acquisition as well. And the churn might increase on the sales team, and we want to hedge against that. Now, A team that can scale, D team that can be chaos, can lead to less profitability at scale, right? Your biggest bottleneck on the sales side is always going to be talent. When it can be talent or marketing, but again, we're touching on the sales side of things here. It can really be talent, having better people, having more people on the team if marketing is dialed in. So you always want to be recruiting to edge the risk. If someone on the team underperforms or people leave, again, you want to be in a scenario where you have leverage over the team, so you're not in a bind where you have to keep someone because you have to and you have no one else to take them. Always want to be interviewing even when you're not hiring. Those are two different things. Hiring and bringing on the team. Always want to interview though. You want to entertain conversation, have interviews so that you can build a bench. And ideally, you always have a bench of 2 to 3 people that you can literally summon whenever you have. You literally just bring them, say, hey, we're ready to bring you on. You ready to get started? Yes, awesome. You bring them on, you get them onboarded so that it can be fast. Otherwise, it could take like 2 to 3 weeks to start the application process, start the interview process until you have the right person. In terms of who to hire, okay, one of my mentors, Dean Kazura, coined this term, ISRP. So it's like the ICP, ideal client profile. Now this is ideal sales rep profile. Again, same as your ICP, you want to have like a rep profile of who you should hire. So based on the questions here, like who is my client? What are my prospects like? Who are they going to resonate with? Are they walking the talk of the offer? What that means is if I'm selling a fitness offer, weight loss program, and I have someone that weighs 300 pounds be my salesperson, they could be a great salesperson, but if I'm looking to get fit, I'm not going to buy from someone that's not fit. It has nothing to do with them personally. That's just the reality. If you have a really advanced avatar, let's say you're selling investment opportunities, you're selling something to high-level investors, high-level business owners, then likely 18 years old kid is not going to do well on that offer if they don't have a lot of like business experience, life experience. They're not going to have a lot of authority on the conversation and things like that, right? What's their age? Again, I just made the example here. If I'm selling hormone offer for women in menopause or something, they're like really older. Again, usually reps that are going to do well on that offer, likely going to be older women that have experienced that, are in it, so they can resonate with the clients and the clients are comfortable opening up to them as well. What's they experienced before? Have they done something like this in the past, right? So again, that's just another thing. And not every sales rep are going to be great on your offer. Someone is a great sales rep, they sell like e-com coaching, doesn't mean they'll be able to sell weight loss like super well. Even though they're probably the best closer on another team, that doesn't mean it's going to like translate that. Now, another thing that can help is to look at your current top performers on your team. What do they have in common? What's their age? What's their background? What have they done experience-wise? Like, are they a male, female? Just making this up, but let's say you have a setter team and you have top 2 setters out of 10 that are crushing it, and then you can look at them and you're like, well, they both have high-level sport experience in high school and universities, so let's look for those kind of people. So that's for the ISRP, your ideal sales rep profile. Now, where do you want to find the talent? There's multiple places you can look at. You can run ads, you could hire recruiters, you could do a bunch of things like make some posts on social, you could go on Indeed, LinkedIn, all those things. From my experience, the best experience I've had hiring reps, one, you headhunt current reps that are crushing it somewhere else. Now that means that you need to know reps, you need to be tapped into into that ecosystem. And you just headhunt, you reach out to people that are crushing it. In your current clients, I've seen a lot of people succeed with this. Let's say you sell transformation for fitness, weight loss, and you have a woman, and it's for a woman specifically. You have a woman in your clients that has sales experience and they went through the program, they lost a lot of weight. They're going to be an awesome rep for your team. So just make some posts in your community and hire people that have those skill sets, but went through the transformation themselves, because their conviction level is going to be so high in the product, in the company. They're already bought in, they went through it, and when they're on calls, they can speak from their own experiences. That's going to build a lot of trust and confidence from prospects. Again, that's just an example with weight loss, but it could be with other products, other services. The other things that works really well is referrals from other reps or your network. Good reps tend to hang around other good reps or to know a lot of other good reps, for example. We use for recruiting in our teams. Now, as far as the hiring funnel is pretty simple. Got the traffic, that piece where you find the talent. Traffic could also be ads, like I said, posts on socials, recruiters, things like that. You have traffic, then we push you an application. Those are really long form applications. Then we have a skill assessment. We have interviews, whether group one-on-ones. You make an offer for the position and then you onboard the person. So that's the hiring funnel. So if you look at the step application, this usually you're going to ask what's their name, email, what time zone they're in, what's their experience like in sales, companies they worked at before, personal goals, why they're interested in the offer. And then something I really like a lot, I would ask resume too, just to see what they've done in their careers. And then 2 to 3 minute loop, that's like the best to save a lot of time. And you can see how they present themselves on camera, and you just hear how they communicate and you look at how they communicate. And that's how I base myself off of that. Let's say you go through the application process, you're like, oh, I like this person. Then I would ask them call recordings of some previous calls they made, either as a setter or as a closer. If they don't have some, you could do a role play, but this is a skill assessment. But I really like those because I can watch on my own time. I could put a 2x. You could leverage AI as well to review the calls. There's just a lot you could do with the call recording. It's going to tell you in an environment they're already used to how they sell, basically. And I don't care about like if the call closed or not. Then you can move to group interview. If you hire just for a few positions, you could just go straight to one-on-one and just do a deeper one-on-one. If you hire a lot at scale and you have a lot of new reps that you're hiring, or maybe your churn is high on your team, or you're just scaling a lot and you need a lot of volume, group interview is like a really leverage way to basically go from the apps to the interviews and be able to be like, look for culture fit, look for EQ, look how they communicate on camera. They're going to be representing you and your brand, and just see how well they do. And from there, you can move to a one-on-one interview where you're going to dig deeper into personal stuff, their personal experience, their metrics, their goals. Just assess if you want to work with that person and how good they are for your company. Let's say pass the interview. That's when I would offer the role, either on that interview, or let's say you have mini interviews, then you have a call with them, or you could call them, you can text them, you offer the position, set the expectations, the KPIs, bring them on, then you hire or you onboard. Or if you are building a bench, then you could just tell them like, hey, really like you, I want to bring you on my team, but right now this is where we're at. I'm going to keep you on our bench. You're my next hire I bring on. Whenever that happens, we're expecting it's going to happen blah 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 at this time, and then just keep the communication open with them. That's for the hiring process. Let's move to the next one, onboarding and ramp up. So the goal is to get reps to KPI as fast as possible at scale. A slow ramp equals lost revenue, a low morale for the reps, and also for you, like there's a big opportunity cost, because if you have a slow ramp, it takes a long time to ramp someone up and know if they're valuable or not, if they're good or not, be keeping them or not, all that time and energy you're putting there. And then also then you have to shift and go back to someone else and rehire someone and start that process again. So there's just a lot of money lost there. Now, in terms of the onboarding, what I like to do is like a sales playbook, which is a big Google Doc, and inside literally just gonna give a whole lot of insight so they can kind of like onboard themselves and study on their self-pay. So it's like leverage from me as a manager or as a business owner if you're the one running the team. So inside of this, you'll find like a breakdown of the offer, like the ICP, what we do, what we solve as a problem, scripts and frameworks, library of calls, library of objections that typically happens, just like some FAQs they can learn, walk through our CRM, our systems, the SOPs, like beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of day, and a breakdown to comp, company culture, company core values, and integrate anything that's relevant for the roles. That's ever evolving like Google Doc. I like to do it in Google Docs, just fast to shift, or you could build a course in a school community circle as well, or Kajabi, whatever you prefer, and you could see the progression of them through the videos. But I like the Google Doc format a lot, like this basically, and it'll just go through this. Now, ramp up timeline from here, the first week basically is going to be training and shadowing. I'm not a fan of shadowing, but some people do that. Basically, again, they're going to be on all calls. So one, they'll be trained on the offer, answering any questions they have. We set them up on all the CRMs and the tech. You're going to have them shadow or just review calls of the top closer. They learn the scripts, listen to calls. They have some one-on-ones with the manager, or it could be group calls if you're onboarding a bunch of people together. They have group calls to answer questions, do role plays, practice. And then at the end of the week, you have an assessment of where they're at. Do they understand the offer? Questions, comments, do the role play. If they pass, then they go live on the calendars or outbounding if they're setters. This is week 1, but ideally this can be done in like 3 to 4 business days if the playbook is really dialed in and they put like a lot of time and energy. The goal is to get them on calls as fast as possible with burning the least amount of leads possible. So they're as ready as possible with the shortest amount of time. So they can go live and we can like give feedback from there. In week 2, this is live basically. So if they're a setter, full outbound. If they're a closer, put them on a half calendar, 2 to 3 calls a day book. They come on all the meetings. They still come on the meetings here, by the way. They did not drop it, but they're attending all the company-wide and sales huddles. Week 2, they go live. They go on the meetings. They have feedback daily on their end of calls, end of days. We, as the manager, we review calls like super tightly with them, see how they're doing, giving feedback, and we try to keep it stupid simple, see how they progress. Quantitatively, the first week, I'm not going to look at the numbers necessarily, but I'm going to look more at the qualitative side of things when I review calls. How do they sound? How well do they communicate? How good are they in their roles? Are they following the SOPs, right? That's more what I'm looking at. In my head, for example, a closer, they're going to go 0 out of their first 10 live calls. Ideally, it's not going to happen, but that's how the mentality you have to have in their first 10 calls. Like, okay, it's going to be a 0. Realistically, honestly, everyone does very well. The reps are going to close very quickly. Their first few deals are going to close them very quickly. And you'll see if someone's going to make it fairly quickly normally, but there are outliers that take a bit longer. It depends on the offer too. Some offers can be longer to learn and get used to the avatar, the product, and those kind of things too. So that's for week 2. Week 3 and 4, we ramp them up to higher volume. So closer, you ramp them up slowly. So you go 3 to 4. Then if they performing well qualitatively, like how they sound on calls, and then they start getting some closes in, then you can ramp them up to 5, 6, 7 calls. But I would not go past 6, 7 book calls per day for a full-time closer. Performance is just going to drop, but that's where I would like start scaling that up as based on that. And setters, you want them to get to 2 to 3 sets per day at minimum. And then you can have one-on-ones with them weekly, just see where they're at, how they're ramping, or group coaching calls for new people that got on board as well. And then by that time, they should pretty much, I'm not saying like if you look at their month average, they're not going to be at KPI because the first week or 2 they're ramping, so their stats going to be lower those weeks. But week 3 and 4, those weeks, they should start to look at KPI or be really close to the KPI comparing to the rest of the team. If not, then again, we diagnose, we see, okay, is it the execution? Is it the skills? Or is it the talent, the person? Are they going to pass or not? And then when to cut a rep. So there's the stats and there's also the attitude. If someone has a bad attitude, they don't show up, they don't do the things, they don't do the basics, they don't follow the SOPs, they're not coachable, then that's a red flag. I would cut them, have the chat with them, and then you cut them. And then setters, if they do less than 1 set a day for multiple weeks, that's a good timing for that. The closers, within 20 calls, they should be trending up. Again, ideally, they're doing better than that, but again, it could be at 10, 15% close rate. It's going to depend on the funnel, the offers, and all of that. At 40 calls, maybe they're at 15, 20% plus, and up right there. They should be at like 70 to 80% of KPI when they are at kind of that range here, and that should be going up. Attitude, if they're not coachable, fast cut. If they don't take feedback, fast cut. If they're emotional, low energy, or not culture fit. So that's for the ramping up and onboarding. Now, as far as the systems, this is just going to be basic overview. There's so much that we could go over. So in terms of basic systems, right, we want data. Systems is basically data, CRM, meetings. Those are like the main things, right? In terms of tech stack, CRM, most people use either HubSpot, Close, Go High Level. From what I've seen, a lot of people use Go High Level. There's just a lot of things can be done. I don't have like personal preferences, but those are the CRMs that most people use. Tracking dashboard, I'm a big fan of Google Sheets. They're like very simple to update. I'm still manual on that side of things. So then you can have, make it sexy with Looker Studio or something. Slack for communication, you have the scheduling links like One Stop Calendly, you have your payment processors and financing partners. Now for the setters in the CRM, basic smart list for them to dial. You have a speed to lead list, which is the leads that just came in, to make sure that we empty those as fast as possible. Opt-ins, people that opted in but have not filled an application and not booked a call. People that filled an opt-in, they completed an application. It's going to depend on your funnel, but most funnels are like this. They fill an application, they did not book a call. People that canceled calls overall, and I believe that's canceled calls in the past 2 weeks, basically. If they're longer than that, way too long. So canceled calls in the past 21 days, and that's going to be in this order. When I do speed to lead first, opt-ins, an application that did not book a call, and then canceled calls 0 to 21 days, no shows the last 14 days. People that did not buy and they had the call over 21 days ago, but are still within 90 days, and then people that did not buy that are way past 90 days. So that's going to help revive some people that the closers maybe not following up with anymore, bring them back in the convo. Cancel calls from over 21 days, and then no shows over 14 days. So that's basic smart list setters. In terms of the closers, what I like for basic pipeline is all the book appointment get here, either from sets or marketing. And then when someone no shows, they move them to no show, move them to cancel. Now those could trigger no show and cancellation sequence for either the closers or the setters to try to rebook them. And then there's some text, some emails going out. I'm not going to cover that. Follow book if they booked the second call to close someone. How to follow up someone that's going to close within less than 14 days. A lot of people just have like follow up booked, but I really like to have it broken down so that I'm a closer. I know how I'm going to work my pipeline. I'm going to work my follow up book. I'm going to work my hot follow-ups. And then after that, I'm going to go my warm and my long-term pipeline, but it just helps prioritize where time goes when. Then warm follow-up, long-term, deposits, sales, and DQs and bad fits. Now the pipeline is going to be constantly evolving. So once you move someone to follow a book, then after the follow-up happens, then maybe they're going to be 2 months out, and then you move them to long-term nurture, right? They're going to be working their pipeline. We're not going to cover that here, but that's how that works. In terms of data and trackers, there's so much data that we could cover cover. I'm going to go over like what I would cover for the setters and the closers. I'm going to break it down quickly. I think there's a lot to be covered on this here, but I'll cover like for setters and then we'll do for closers. This is for closers and setters. You want to have a tracker where you have the data per setter and you have the data per closer, and then you have summaries, and then you can have monthly to compare rep to rep monthly. If I'm a rep, my name is Jacob, then I can compare last month, this month, I can compare 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and then also I can compare to other setters and other closers, and I can compare team-wide what's the average of the team. Now, in terms of setters, data points, some are going to be formulas that you have to calculate, but those are things that would get filled in the EODs, and I'm going to touch on the EODs in a second, and then they would go in the tracker so that we can track throughout the month and throughout the year, right? Total calls made, how many people picked up from those calls, how much talk time did we have on the phone. Meaningful conversations are conversations that are over 2 minutes. Again, you can do 5 minutes, you can do a minute. I like 2 minutes is enough, but not too much. Meaningful conversation percentage. Basically, it's to know how many to calculate meaningful convo divided by the amount of pickup. That helps us know how well someone is doing over the phone to keep the conversation going. That's pretty much it. So if this number here is really low in percentage, that means most of the time is going to mean that your setter is probably not really good at the opening part of the call. Sets proposed, those are the people that I pitched, proposed the meeting with the closers, and then how many of those we scheduled. Now, if someone has a lot of meaningful conversations, this is where we track your convo to set, how many meaningful conversations they had, and we put the amount of sets. So if I have 10 sets, but I had 100 meaningful conversations, that means my convo to set percentage would be 10%, which is pretty low. That means that after that initial part, I'm not able to build enough of a gap or value to pitch people. Could also mean that the lead quality is like really low and we are DQing people because we're qualifying further. Usually it's more of a skill set issue on that sales side. Now, what I want to count to on the setter side is the sets on the calendar. So those are the sets that are on the closer calendar for that day that they booked. How many showed up, how many closed, and then we can calculate. There's not a lot of people that track this, but this allows you to know what's the show rate, what's the close rate per setter. And how we get that data, it's not sexy, but it's looking at the end of day of the closers of the day before. Usually the end of days and filling out the trackers happen the morning of the next day for the setters because they are dependent on the closers updating the CRM, doing their EODs to see what happened with each of their sets that were on the calendar. But that gives you really good data so you can diagnose what's the show rate for this setter. Okay, how is it compared to the team? What's their close rate on the showed calls? And then you can diagnose the constraints per setter. You calculate the show rate, the show up to close, set to close. So that's the booking to close basically. Cash collected, revenue, and then cash collection to revenue ratio. And then you have the cash collect per calls booked and revenue per calls booked per setter. Those are going to be the biggest numbers as well as far as the efficiency of your setters in the funnel. That's for the setter side. By the way, if you're a coaching business doing 150K plus per month consistently and you want this entire process and system built for you without you having to lift a finger, click the link below, book a call, and basically we'll come in as your fractional sales department and we'll deploy this entire system for you. Now back to the video. Now let's move to the closer side. This is not something that's calculated a lot by people. I like to count the available slots. I'm going to talk about forecasting later. It's really good to understand your capacity and what can we handle on the closer side for the marketing and the setters as far as like booking calls and where do we situate ourselves. So basically that's how many slots someone has free. I'm a closer, I have 10 slots available today for bookings. I have 10 slots. How many calls scheduled, so how many booked appointment, those available slots, and then we'll calculate our slot utilization. And then live calls, how many of those scheduled calls showed up. Then from that we can calculate a show rate. I like to try the offer rate. This just gives me an indication how many people we pitch. I don't really care about the offers made, but the reason I look at that and the offer rates, if the offer rate is low, that means two things. Either the closers are lazy and are protecting their time and are not pitching, or that means we're not getting the right people on the phone, or maybe like the lead quality is not super good. How we know which one is what? We look at their end of days, we look at the CRM, and then we review sales calls and we can make an assessment what is what. This number here, I like to optimize like 80, 90%. Again, ideally it would be like 100%. We pitch everyone that maybe we DQ too much. The top of the funnel, either by the setters or the applications, the marketing. That's kind of the sweet spot. How many deposits they did, how many closes. Then from there we can have our close rate. I like the schedule to close ratio because it takes into consideration someone can have a really high close rate, but then they do stuff before the calls, like maybe they qualify super hard over text, people like ahead of time and people no show. So maybe someone has a really high close rate, but their schedule to close is higher. So that's the amount of closes versus the amount of scheduled calls. So if I put a call on the calendar of someone, the likelihood of them closing that book call, that means it encompasses the close rate and the show rate. That means how well they take care of their leads versus other people. So I really like this here. Cash collected, that's like a given. Revenue generated as well. And then I like to calculate a cash to rev ratio. Could be a lead quality thing, but then how they objection handle and do the open wallet at the end, or maybe the packages that they sell to. If they sell super high packages to broke people, then the cash collection is likely going to be low. And if they sell real low packages, people I could have closed more, then our percentage is going to be super high. If our percentage is like really high, it means maybe we should charge more as well. So it just gives good indication. And again, if someone closes a real high percentage, but everyone's on really big long payment plans, then their cash to revenue ratio is going to be super low. So maybe we could be collecting more cash, and there's a risk that we never collect the money. That's another reason I look at that. And then the last two things, a cash collected per call book and a revenue per call book. Now on the marketing side, we know how much it costs to book an appointment. Let's say it's $100, $200, $500. Then it's really practical to know per rep and then team-wide, how much are we collecting day one from a book call, and then how much revenue are we generating over time when they complete their payments. So that's basically what that means. And that can give you a ROAS per rep. So if my cost per call book, easy math, is $100 and my cash collected per book call with this rep is $300, that means I have a 3x cash ROAS on that rep. And then maybe I have another rep that's at $1,000 per call book, but the cost is the same to book a call. So in my example, and in $1,000, then that's a 10x ROAS on that rep. So then in the priority of the calendars, then I can book more people on that closer calendar because I'm like, oh, this rep is more profitable. This is what I look at to make decisions. Those are the most important one. And they're a byproduct of all basically those data points. That's like the culmination of that. So that's the ultimate one. Now let's move into sales meetings. Meetings are one of the most important things you can do for your sales team. They're super high leverage and can really impact the growth and revenue of the business. Why is that? Because one, it's like a one-to-many environment. So if I'm manager, maybe owner as well, if I put an hour of time there, then I can get 10 hours of output if there's 10 people there, right? So that's really high leverage. The other thing too, it's culture. Culture on your teams when you run a remote team on meetings basically, and then it's on Slack and it's like in the values of the company. So those are great environments to build that culture and build that camaraderie between the team and the cohesion and where we communicate and everything. So they can have a really big impact. There's many ways to skin the cat on how you run meetings. Depending on your team size, the cadence can vary. I'm a big fan of like daily meetings. Now, depending on how big the team is, you can have like Mondays and Fridays, setters and closers. You have some specific training for each positions like throughout the week, or at some point it's become really, really big. Maybe every day you have a daily meeting for setters and a daily meeting for closers as well. That's usually rare because it can become redundant, and then I'd rather have them go on calls and make some sales basically. So many ways to skin the cat. Now in terms of the structure, a structure like is fairly simple. We do wins, any announcements, the company, the sales teams. We do projections. I say when we do them because depending on your meeting cadence, you'll do projections every meeting if you have just 3 meetings a week, for example, or if you have 5 meetings a week, then I would just do them like 2 or 3 times a week maximum because it can get redundant and we can save that time to do some more training, right? Then the rest of the meeting is going to be training, right? So we can do call reviews and role play, skill development, like work on certain parts of the call, do more like a teaching session, like I'm teaching you something like a new word track, or we're covering a part of the script like this type of objection, show them how to follow up, different ways, cadence, how to manage their pipeline, adjust their scripts, many trainings we could do on that side. End of the reports. Now, basically in the end of the reports, we're going to find the numbers above that I gave you as far as like the data, but also we're going to get the number side, which is a quantitative, and we'll get the qualitative, like how was your day? Anything you need some help with? Do you need some calls reviewed? So that we can see what happened every day with each rep. So we have like the trackers, so the big picture stuff, month to month, week to week, year to year, we can compare, but day to day, I look at end of days. It can be as simple as like a Google form or a type form. Questions are there, get filled out, zaps into Slack, right? And that helps the managers monitor their activity level, catch issues or trends. If you see someone looks like low energy and their end of days, then you can address it, catch issues early, can enforce standards, you can coach based on the data. If you see trends, you see maybe, oh, someone's booking rate is really low, it's like 2 days in a row, right? Things like that. Prevent drifting, and then you can keep the pipeline moving. If you see a bunch of follows being booked, then you're like, okay, what's happening with this person? What's happening with this person, right? And if you can see trends as well, oh, it seems like they're always getting this objection, or that's always the reason someone is not closing, right? So that can give some insights there. So forecasting here. This is a really fun part. Not a lot of companies can get to that point because one, most times they don't have the right data, and two, their process is not as predictable and repeatable. It should be or could be to be able to do that. But basically, once you have a repeatable sales process, you have clear KPIs that people are hitting consistently, and you have predictable marketing, and then it just becomes a math equation. Like, what revenue do you want to hit? And then we just reverse engineer with the amount of ad spend, the amount of like content we need to put out so that we can hit the amount of leads and calls we need to book. Then how many people do I need to handle that volume? And then just doing more of what's working, right? So that's really forecasting in a nutshell. Example, if I want to hit $1 million a month, my average deal size is 6K. That means I need 167 deals per month. Now, if my close rate is 30%, that means I need to book 550 calls. At 70% show rate, that means I need 800 booking. And then if we book 20% of the applications that we generate, or maybe the opt-ins, that means we need 4,000 apps. Now, if each app costs us X amount, at scale the number is going to vary, but basically that's what happens. That's how you break the numbers down. Once you have that data and that clarity of what needs to happen, then you can see what's the bottleneck to you getting either to those amount of apps, or those amount of book calls, or those amount of like live calls, or those amount of deals. like, where is it breaking? Is it our show rate? Is it our close rate? Is it the number of leads we're generating? Is it the fact we're generating so many leads we don't have enough people to call them or to take the inbound appointments? Like, what is it, right? So then you can see like what's the bottleneck essentially. And then on top of that, to be able to forecast, you want to be able to calculate the capacity for your setters and your closers, which on the closer side, we have it on our tracker so we can have a really good pulse on that. And our setters, then we can know like based on the amount of calls that are being made, how many leads we're generating. Is like, okay, each setters can handle how many leads. Typically what we see is like 20 to 30 leads a day per setter. Over than that, they're not going to follow up properly. Less than that, again, maybe they're not as busy as they could be or should be. Those are just some rule of thumb. That's as far as that goes. So based on the forecast, if the capacity is lower than the revenue target, then we increase capacity by hiring more reps. If the reps are available and we have capacity, but the calendars and maybe the pipelines are empty, then we scale ads and marketing. If the ads are inconsistent and we can't predictably do things, then we need to fix the funnel and fix the ad. Let's go over the sales process. There's sales management and culture left here. In terms of the sales process, I'm going to do like basic overview of the sales process. There's many ways to skin the cat here. Goal with the sales process to create duplicatable recipe that every rep follows. Again, reps are not going to follow to a T. Everyone has their own style a little bit. Everyone has their own personality, but we want a process that's predictable, that's repeatable at scale. That's the goal of the sales process, and it gives us the highest likelihood of being successful and enrolling clients. That's really the goal. The general acquisition system is going to be like usually a one call close process. It's usually like a VSL funnel. Maybe it's like webinars. Maybe it's a low ticket product. There's going to be some variance in how the calls are being booked and the process there, but typically it's like one call close process with closers. Marketing again is opt-ins applications that don't book, the setters outbound dial. If an application is qualified based on the marketing funnel, then they get pushed to a closer calendar. If someone is DQ'd, maybe we prevent them from booking, or maybe we book them with a setter for an inbound triage, right? That's typically that. Now, I'm not a fan of like two call close where a closer is going to do like two calls, because that adds a lot of friction and there's a drop off point between the initial call and the second call too, versus going straight to calendar. So personally, I'm not a big fan of it. It can be appropriate depending on the offer, the avatar, the ticket size, the funnel, but personally, I'm not a fan. Depends on the situation. I prefer like the one call close, and then we do whatever we have to do to make sure that each person coming on the closed calendar has his reasons to be there. That's what I said. Based on lead routing, type form questions, applications, and better setting process, then we can make sure that we can optimize for a one call close that, in my opinion, gives us a higher likelihood of scaling, not things falling through the cracks in those drop off rate. Now, as far as the call framework, many different beliefs around this, but basically for me, what I like, it's a pretty simple process. It's pretty standard. That's on the closer call, but on the setter side, we pretty much stop all the way here, and then the closers kind of take it there if the setter does a triage or it's a set. But basically you have your quick frame, set the agenda, set the tone, current situation, where they're at right now, what's the problem, why are they looking to change things, what they've tried to solve the situation or to get to their goals, what they need help with, what are they looking for right here in solution. Then future pace is like, that's a future outcome. What does that look like? Where they want to go? How do they feel when they get there? The vision there, like some call it Dream Island, like Cole. Oh, okay, I forgot one thing here, the consequence. Okay, so I'll do a consequence after the future pace. So consequence, which is like what happens if they don't make the change, what happens if they don't get to their future state, or what happens if the problem keeps going on. And transition, we transition from the discovery to the pitch. So it's like, okay, thanks, I have a good idea where you at based on what you said. Here's what we do and how we can help. Then you pitch. Usually it's like pillars of the offer, then deliverables, how it works. After that, do a tie down, temp check, drop the price, and then you objection handle if there's any, and then you enroll. That's like typical like call structure, sales process framework. Like I said, the setters, if they're involved in the process, will do typically like that initial part, and then the closer, we kind of take the baton from here. We go over what the setters kind of covered, and then we take it from there, and then we push later in the sales process depending on where they're at when they come in. So that's for the call structure and the sales process. Now going to sales management. What's the goal of sales management? Is to lead the team, install standards, and enforce accountability. That is, in a nutshell, making sure the team performs the highest potential and generate more revenue for the business. What are the daily responsibilities of the manager? Run morning meetings. They don't have to be in the morning necessarily, but run the meetings, right? Review the end of day, review the trackers the day before, port reps on Slack, you temp check on calls, like you look at the outbounds happening, listen to some calls like QC, you do some call reviews either in private or when you run your meetings, look at the data, look at the dashboard, are we pacing well, like those kind of things. Communicate with the marketing if we have too many leads, we book too far out, maybe not enough, maybe something with the lead quality, and then we hold the reps accountable to a certain standard. One-on-ones, again, call reviews, audit the pipeline, identify the bottlenecks in the business and sales side of things. You look at projections, are we pacing? You look at who's underperforming, you address those people, and then you replace people. So there's some hiring that's happening. If you have a recruiter or someone else, then that person could be doing that too to help them. But a manager always have to be hiring. Now, also standards versus KPI. KPI is a number that's like a baseline number that's needed to be on this team in this position. Standards are how you show up and what you tolerate, what is acceptable on meetings, off meetings, as far as behaviors with the team, right? How you show up yourself as a leader is going to set the standard. Like, are you on time? Are you late? What do you look like? Having the cameras on in the meeting, the energy level, them doing their admin, updating their deals, updating the CRM, doing their trackers, right? Doing what they're supposed to do. If they don't do that, then I can guarantee you they don't do the basic. The communication, the effort of the manager, their involvement, and how present they are. Those are the standards. Standards is KPI. I'm not going to spend much more time on here. Now, in terms of the principles, basically your team is never going to outperform or outgrow your standard. If you have shitty standards for yourself, they're going to have shitty standards. If you have awesome high standards, like you set the bar, you set the tone. So if your standards are like really high, then you're going to pull them up. Last thing, culture is one of those things that's like can be measured, but it's more like felt on the team, and culture can really make or break your team. Like, what's the culture you have on your team? That's going to determine a lot of the outcome. You could have like badass culture, not the most talented people, but because of the culture, like a rising tide raises all ship. Everyone's going to elevate each other. Everyone's going to have fun. Everyone's going to support each other, going to compete together, even if they're not the best players. It's like in sports, you could have the best athlete, but if their attitude is not good, it's not mean they're going to poison the team, and the vibe's going to be weird on the team, and you want people to work together and compete as well and be performers. People that are high performers, A players, that want to be around other high players and high performers. Okay, so that's in essence culture. And create an environment where A players thrive and B players weed themselves out. B players or C players are not going to be around A players for too long, because either they're getting pull up and they become an A player, or they get weeded out. It's going to be too much and the pressure is going to like weed them out, right? What culture means essentially is high standards, radical accountability, public recognition, private correction, momentum, team spirit. We celebrate the wins. We challenge people to become better. We support everyone as well. The A player culture indicators, like I said, it's more of a things that you notice, but it's not like a number, right? So, but the reps are competing. They ask for help, support, call reviews. They track their numbers. They do the extra mile, the extra work. They bring ideas. They push each other. They help each other, and no one's kind of hiding, or there's no like hush hush happening behind the curtains. There's no excuse. Your environment is going to either like kill or create performance. So you can have a great script, great offer, but if the culture is soft, performance is going to collapse. If the culture is really good, everyone levels up. In terms of scaling to $1 million a month, we went over in this video, it's a completely different sport than just getting to 100K. What got you here won't get you there. Now at 100K or 300 or 500K, you can potentially hustle your way there, but at $1 million a month plus, you need to have a repeatable system, like a winning formula, a recipe that you can duplicate, you can replicate, and do more at scale. So you need a recruiting engine, you need a fast ramp up period, you need visibility on the data so you can make data driven decision, a repeatable sales process, good management, and high performance culture. So that's sort of culture. Over this video, we went over how to go from 100, 300, 500K up to $1 million, what needs to be in place in order to do that. Scaling to $1 million a month is different than just getting to 200, 300, 500. What got you here won't get you there. At 100K, you can hustle your way there. At $1 million, you need a system, you need a recruiting engine, fast ramp up process, data visibility, a repeatable sales process. You need to have really good management and a high performance culture. Can you build this yourself? Yes, you can. However, you are likely going to drop the ball somewhere, either in the marketing, the fulfillment, on the sales side, or maybe you'll just burn yourself out. That's only going to scale up to a certain point. I've seen it so many times. The founder keeps their hand on the steering wheel for so long. I'd advise against it. Personally, you're just going to save so much time and so much peace of mind, headache, and the opportunity cost. Every month you're not doing $1 million a month, you're losing balance, the difference between where you are and that $1 million a month. Just quoting Ormozy there. If you are a coaching business or a consulting business and you know over 100K a month and you ready to scale to 7 figures a month, click the link below to book a call. This is not going to be a high pressure sales call. We're literally just going to look under the hood, your business, look at the numbers, see what they are, what can be done. I'm going to show you how we would scale to $1 million a month with your team. Just an honest conversation, no pressure there. Happy to chat further. My name is Jacob Mercier. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.